I was still holding the album when my father told me not to come home again. It was a heavy, leather-bound thing, its pages swollen with Polaroids, faded movie tickets, and scraps of birthday cards I'd spent weeks piecing together in my Philadelphia apartment. I'd driven 4 hours through snow-dusted roads to Maplewood, New Jersey, to give it to Mom for Christmas. Every page was a memory, us kids chasing waves on the Jersey shore. Dad flipping burgers at a 4th of July barbecue, Mom laughing so hard her eyes crinkled at some terrible pun. It was Christmas Eve, 2025, and the air smelled of pine, cinnamon, and the promise of family. The dining room glowed under the chandelier, Mom's good china gleaming on the table, the kind she only used for holidays. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner, its ornaments, some handmade from my childhood. Lopsided stars and glittery pine cones, swaying gently. I was still in my coat, scarf loose around my neck, smiling as I held the album, when Dad's voice sliced through the warmth. "Give back the $40,000, Allison," he said, low and sharp, like he was delivering a verdict. "Or don't call this home again." The words didn't fit, not here, not on Christmas Eve. We hadn't even said grace. The ham sat untouched, steam curling from its honey glaze. The mashed potatoes were mounded in their bowl, the cranberry sauce untouched in its crystal dish. My sister, Claire, stared at her plate, her fork frozen midair. My brother, Nathan, gazed out the window, where snowflakes caught the porch light like tiny stars. Mom, with her silver braid and soft hands, pressed her palms into her lap, her eyes glued to the tablecloth. Nobody laughed. Nobody said it was a mistake. "Excuse me?" My voice came out thin, like it belonged to someone else. Dad's jaw tightened, his knuckles white around the carving knife he hadn't yet used. "Don't play dumb, Allison. You know what you did." I looked at Claire, then Nathan, then Mom. Nobody met my gaze. The album's weight pressed into my arms, its edges biting my skin through my sweater. "What are you accusing me of?" I asked, louder, my voice trembling at the edges, a crack I couldn't hide. Claire finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, mascara smudged like she'd been crying before I even walked in. "Mom's savings," she said, her voice sharp despite the tears. $40,000, gone last month. Right after you set up her banking app. She said it like she'd rehearsed it, like she'd been waiting to hurl it at me. My mouth opened, but no sound came. It was true, I'd helped Mom with her accounts. Back in September, she'd been nervous about going paperless, muttering about hackers and the cloud stealing her money. I'd driven down for the weekend, sat with her at the kitchen table, walked her through the First Coastal Credit app, set up passwords, security questions, the works. She'd insisted on writing everything in her spiral notebook, the one she kept in the junk drawer next to the fridge, alongside pens, expired coupons, and a tangle of rubber bands. That was 3 months ago. Now, they were saying I'd used that moment to rob her blind. "You think I stole from Mom?" I whispered. The words felt wrong, like they'd sour the air, taint the pine-scented warmth. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to shake her head, to laugh, to say something, anything. She didn't. She just clutched her napkin, her knuckles pale, like she might be sick. Nathan shifted in his chair, his voice stiff, like it hurt to speak. "We didn't want to believe it, Allison. But the bank confirmed the transfers were made through the app. Nobody else had access. Just you." I stared at him, then at Claire, then back at Mom. The room felt smaller, the walls closer, the trees' lights too bright, stabbing at my eyes. The album was suddenly too heavy, like it was anchoring me to a moment that didn't exist anymore. I wasn't their sister, their daughter. I was a thief. I set the album down on the sideboard, careful, like it might shatter. The leather made a soft thud against the polished wood, a sound that echoed in the silence. My fingers fumbled for my scarf, my coat still half-buttoned. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. "You have until New Year's," Dad said behind me, his voice quiet but final, like a door slamming shut. "Then we go to the lawyer." I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream or slam the steering wheel like they do in movies. I just drove, scarf flapping loose, the album left behind like a sacrifice they wouldn't understand. Maplewood was alive with Christmas cheer, wreaths on doors, snowmen in yards, porch lights casting halos on the snow. The town smelled like firewood and gingerbread, but it felt hollow, like a stage set for someone else's life. I pulled into a motel off Route 78, the kind with a flickering neon sign and a vending machine that hummed all night. The clerk, a tired woman with a Santa pin on her vest, didn't ask why I needed a room on Christmas Eve. I was grateful for that small kindness. The room smelled like bleach and burnt coffee, the carpet worn under my boots. I kicked them off, sank onto the lumpy bed, and let my hands shake. I was 36 years old, a data analyst trusted with corporate audits worth millions, and my own family thought I'd stolen from them. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was that I wasn't entirely surprised. There'd been signs, small but sharp, like splinters under the skin. Claire's eye rolls when Mom bragged about my promotions at the tech firm. Nathan's jab last summer, saying I was too busy playing big shot to visit. Even Mom, last Christmas, when I'd offered to pay for her car repairs, had hesitated, like my money came with strings. I'd laughed it off, thought it was just family quirks, the kind you shrug away because love is supposed to outweigh the sting. I thought we were still us. I lay back, staring at the water-stained ceiling, its cracks like a map to nowhere. I replayed that September afternoon with Mom. The kitchen table, her nervous laugh as I showed her the app, the way she scribbled passwords in her notebook with a ballpoint pen that kept skipping. I'd teased her about her handwriting, told her she should type it instead, but she'd waved me off, saying paper was safer. Had I missed something? That notebook, was it still in the drawer? The drawer was never locked. Claire, who floated in and out of the house between retail jobs, was always poking around, rummaging for snacks or spare change. Nathan had a key, came and went as he pleased, his freelance gigs giving him too much time and not enough structure. I'd set up the app, sure, but I wasn't the only one who could have seen those notes. I thought of earlier moments, ones I'd buried. The Thanksgiving 2 years ago when Claire had snapped at me for buying Mom a new coat, saying I was showing off. The Christmas before that, when Nathan had muttered something about me buying loyalty after I offered to cover Dad's medical copay. I'd thought they were joking, or at least I'd told myself they were. But now, those moments felt like rehearsals for this betrayal, like they'd been building a case against me long before the money disappeared. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the dim room. A text from Claire, "We didn't want to do this, but you left us no choice. No Merry Christmas. No, are you okay?" Just that, like I'd broken something sacred, like I owed them an apology. I turned the phone face down, the vibrations swallowed by the silence. At work, I untangled data trails, fraudulent transfers, hidden accounts, lies buried in spreadsheets. I know what it looks like when money moves and someone pins the blame on the wrong person. Someone had made me their fall guy, and I knew how to find them. If they wanted a thief, I'd show them what it looked like when I started digging. Morning came gray and quiet, no church bells, just the low growl of a snowplow on the highway. I poured myself a cup of motel coffee, bitter as regret, and opened my laptop on the wobbly desk. Money doesn't vanish, it moves. The trick is knowing where to look and who benefits. My firm had been tracking a surge in financial scams targeting seniors, small accounts drained in careful chunks, just below federal reporting thresholds. One bank kept surfacing in the data, First Coastal Credit, Mom's bank. I hadn't told my family I was on the case. It was confidential, but I had clearance to access transaction data, and I knew exactly who to ask. I messaged Isadora, our cybersecurity lead, with Mom's name, a date range, and the Maplewood branch. She replied within an hour, her email terse but loaded, 3 transfers from Mom's account, spaced 4 days apart. October 3rd, $15,000. October 7th, $12,000. October 11th, $13,000. All done via the banking app, but not from Mom's phone. The device IP matched the home Wi-Fi. That was the first crack. They'd said I was the only one with access, but these transfers came from someone in the house. Isadora attached a follow-up. The app's two-factor authentication had been rerouted to a phone number not listed on Mom's account. I cross-checked it. Nathan's number. The recovery email was Claire's personal Gmail, the one she used for everything: online shopping, social media, even her dating profile. I leaned back, the motel chair creaking under me. They hadn't just taken the money. They'd planned it, timed it to follow my setup, and banked on the family believing I was the culprit. I dug deeper, my fingers flying over the keyboard, the coffee going cold beside me. The bank's fraud team had flagged similar patterns across New Jersey, transfers designed to skirt scrutiny, often after a family member helped with digital banking. I pulled the app's metadata from Mom's account. The first login after I left town came from a tablet, not Mom's phone, connected to the home Wi-Fi. Claire's tablet, the one she used for streaming shows and scrolling through Pinterest. The one-time password went to an email I hadn't registered. I traced it. Nathan's work email, the one he barely checked, set up for his sporadic freelance gigs. They weren't clever. They were arrogant. They thought nobody would look, not if the perfect daughter was the obvious target. I sipped the coffee, grimacing at its bitterness, and let the data paint the picture. I remembered a moment from last Easter, when Claire had complained about her credit card debt, her voice sharp as she glanced at my new car in the driveway. Nathan had chimed in, saying I must be rolling in it to afford it, his tone half joking, half bitter. I'd brushed it off, but now it felt like a rehearsal for this betrayal. They'd seen my life, my job, my stability, and decided I was the one who could take the fall. I called Isadora, keeping my voice low, though the motel walls were thin. Can you get me the device signatures and login timestamps? And any audit logs from the bank side? She didn't ask why, just said she'd send them by noon. I opened my suitcase, pulled out a sleek gray folder, the kind I used for client presentations, with dividers and clear plastic sleeves. If they wanted a villain, I'd give them one who came with receipts. The files arrived at 11:47 a.m. I sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop balanced on my knees, piecing it together like a puzzle. The audit logs confirmed the transfers were initiated from Claire's tablet, with Nathan's phone receiving the authentication codes. But there was more. The bank's internal notes mentioned a physical visit to the Maplewood branch on October 2nd, the day before the first transfer. Someone had updated Mom's account profile, adding Nathan's number as a secondary contact. The teller's log listed Claire's name as the person who'd come in, presenting Mom's ID. I froze, my breath catching. Mom's ID. I remembered a weekend in August, when Mom had a minor surgery, a routine procedure for her gallbladder, nothing serious. Claire had volunteered to stay with her at the hospital, playing the dutiful daughter, posting selfies with Mom on Instagram to prove it. Mom's purse had been with her the whole time, her wallet, her checkbook, her driver's license. That's where it started. Claire must have taken the ID, maybe snapped a photo of it, then slipped it back before Mom noticed. Nathan, with his key to the house, could have grabbed the notebook from the drawer any time, probably while Mom was napping or distracted by her soaps. I opened the bank's transaction history again, cross-referencing dates with a calendar I kept on my phone. The pattern was clear, the transfers were spaced to avoid triggering a fraud alert, each just under the $15,000 threshold that would have prompted a review. It wasn't random. It was calculated. I thought of Claire's face at dinner, her red eyes, her rehearsed accusation. She'd been crying, but not for Mom. She was scared, not of me, but of getting caught. And Nathan, his silence, his refusal to look at me, wasn't guilt. It was calculation, waiting for the storm to pass. I spent the afternoon building my case, organizing the evidence like I would for a corporate audit. Screenshots of the audit logs, highlighted to show the IP matches. Timestamps of the logins, circled in red. A diagram mapping the IP addresses to Claire's tablet and Nathan's phone. A copy of the teller's log, with Claire's signature from that October visit, its loops and flourishes unmistakable from the notes she used to leave on the fridge. I printed everything at the motel's ancient business center, the printer jamming twice, my hands shaking as I fed it paper. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about showing them who they'd chosen to trust. By evening, I had a stack of papers, neatly arranged in the folder, each page a piece of the truth they'd tried to bury. I sat on the bed, staring at it, the weight of what came next settling in my chest like a stone. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to see their faces, hear their excuses, or feel the sting of Mom's silence again. But I couldn't let them rewrite me into their villain. I thought of Mom, her napkin twisted in her hands, her eyes avoiding mine. Did she believe them? Or was she just too tired, too worn down by years of mediating our squabbles, to fight? I didn't know. But I'd find out. I thought of other moments, ones I hadn't let myself dwell on. The summer after college, when I'd landed my first job and sent Mom and Dad a check to help with the mortgage. Claire had called it charity, her voice dripping with resentment, like I was lording it over them. Or the Christmas when I was 25, and Nathan had borrowed my car without asking, returning it with a dent and no apology, saying I could afford to fix it. I'd let those moments slide, told myself family was messy, that love meant forgiving the small hurts. But they weren't small. They were warnings, and I'd ignored them. I didn't call ahead. I drove back on December 27th, the Jersey sky heavy with clouds, the roads slick with melted snow. Maplewood looked the same, Christmas lights strung across porches, a snowman listing in a neighbor's yard, its carrot nose half gone. The house stood at the end of the street, its windows warm, the driveway packed with Nathan's pickup, Claire's hatchback, Mom's old sedan. No guests, just them. I parked on the curb, the engine ticking as I sat, the folder in my lap. It held every lie they thought I wouldn't catch, logs, timestamps, proof. I stepped out, the cold biting my cheeks, and climbed the porch steps. The door was unlocked, like always, the knob icy under my fingers. The house smelled like mulled wine and roasted garlic, the kind of comfort that used to mean home. Voices drifted from the kitchen, a clink of dishes, Claire's laugh, sharp and brittle, like glass about to break. I walked through the living room, past the Christmas tree, its lights reflecting off the ornaments I'd helped hang as a kid, a clay snowflake I'd made in 3rd grade, a tiny reindeer Claire had painted. The album was still on the sideboard, untouched, its leather collecting dust, a relic of a family that didn't exist anymore. I found them in the kitchen. Claire sat on a stool, sipping cocoa, her legs swinging like she was 16 again, plotting her next rebellion. Nathan leaned against the counter, scrolling his phone, a half-eaten sandwich beside him, crumbs scattered like evidence of his carelessness. Mom was at the sink, rinsing a pan, her movements slow, deliberate, her braids swaying slightly. Dad stirred a pot of soup, steam curling around him, his shoulders hunched. They froze when I walked in, the air shifting, heavy, like the moment before a storm. Nobody spoke. I crossed to the kitchen island, where we used to roll out cookie dough, where Claire and I had once giggled over misshapen gingerbread men. I set the folder down, the leather creaking as I opened it, the sound loud in the silence. You said I stole from Mom, I said, my voice steady, though my heart pounded so hard I thought they'd hear it. Let me show you what really happened. I pulled out the first printout, a transaction log, $15,000, October 3rd, from a tablet on your Wi-Fi, Claire. I laid it down, the paper whispering against the wood. The second, $12,000, October 7th, same device, recovery code sent to Nathan's phone. The third, $13,000, October 11th, Claire's email as backup. I kept going, my voice calm, deliberate, like I was presenting to a client, though my hands trembled slightly. You used Mom's notebook, didn't you? The one in the drawer. You knew I'd helped her, so you waited, then made it look like me. Claire's mug hit the counter with a clink, cocoa sloshing over the rim, pooling brown on the granite. Nathan's phone went dark, his thumb still hovering over the screen. Mom turned, her hands dripping, her eyes wide as she stared at the papers, her lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Dad stopped stirring, the ladle frozen in his hand, soup simmering unattended. I didn't stop. You went to the bank, Claire. October 2nd. You added Nathan's number to Mom's account. You used her ID. I know because the teller logged your name and your signature hasn't changed since high school. Claire's voice was thin, almost a hiss, her eyes flashing. You went through our stuff? You spied on us? I tilted my head, my voice soft but sharp, cutting through her deflection. You went through Mom's. You took her ID, her trust, her money. Mom stepped closer, her eyes scanning the papers, her hands trembling so badly she had to grip the edge of the island. The bank said it was the app, she whispered, her voice fragile, like she needed to believe it, like it could make this nightmare untrue. It was, I said, my voice steady now, though it hurt to keep it that way. But not my login. The transfers came from your house, your Wi-Fi, your devices. You let them convince you I'd do this. I looked at Dad, his face pale, his eyes older than I remembered, lines etched deeper than they'd been last week. You told me not to come back. You never asked if I was guilty. Silence fell, thick and cold, like snow piling outside, muffling the world. Claire looked away, her fingers twisting a napkin into knots, shredding it into tiny pieces. Nathan stared at the floor, his jaw tight, his hands shoved in his pockets. Mom's voice broke the quiet, barely audible, her words aimed at no one in particular, or maybe at herself. You let me think my daughter stole from me. Claire's face twisted, not with guilt but defiance, her eyes bright with resentment, her cheeks flushed. You always get everything, Allison. The job, the praise, Mom's pride. You're the golden child, always have been. I just wanted something for me. Just once. I studied her, her cheeks flushed, her hands shaking, her hair falling loose from its messy bun. She looked smaller, like the kid who used to beg me to braid her hair, who'd cry when I went back to college because she missed me. You didn't take something, I said, my voice low, each word deliberate. You broke everything. Nathan cleared his throat, his voice flat, detached, like he was commenting on the weather. She'll be fine, Mom. Allison's got her fancy job, her big city life. It wasn't about her. I exhaled, slow, fighting the ache spreading through my chest, sharp and cold like a winter wind. It's always about family, I said, the words heavier than I meant, sinking into the silence. I turned to Mom, who'd sunk into a chair, the folder open before her, her hands empty, palms up like she didn't know what to hold on to. Dad spoke, his voice rough, cracked, like it hurt to form the words. What now, Allison? I met his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the kid in the room, the one who needed his approval, his pride. I'm not pressing charges, I said, my voice steady, final. I've sent the file to the family lawyer. You decide what happens next. I zipped the folder shut, my hands moving on muscle memory, precise, like I was closing a deal in a boardroom. You said don't come back unless I returned the money. I didn't take it, but I brought the truth. I waited, just long enough for the words to land, for the weight to settle like dust after a collapse. Then I turned, my boots soft on the hardwood, the sound swallowed by the hum of the refrigerator. Allison, Mom's voice cracked, raw, like it hurt to speak, like she was reaching for something already gone. I paused at the doorway, the Christmas tree lights blurring in my vision, their colors bleeding together, red and gold and green. Christmas is over, I said, my voice quiet but sure, each word a step away. You made sure of it. I left without another word. No folder, no album, just my keys and the pieces of me they'd shattered. I sat in my car outside, the engine off, watching the kitchen window through the falling snow. The lights stayed on, but no one came out. Claire's laugh didn't return. Nathan didn't open the door. Nobody ran down the driveway to fix it. That silence, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. Back in Philadelphia, the city felt colder, its skyline sharper, like it was cutting me out of its edges. I went back to work, smiled at meetings, nodded at clients, acted like nothing had changed. But I had. I stopped calling on weekends, ignored the family chat, let Mom's voicemails pile up for 12 days before I listened. Her voice was soft, broken, barely above a whisper, the kind of sound that lingers like a bruise. Allison, we were wrong. I see it now. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive us, but the house isn't the same without you. She hung up before the minute mark, like she couldn't bear to say more, or maybe didn't know how. A letter came 3 weeks later, real paper, postmarked Maplewood, the envelope slightly crumpled. Inside was a locket, the one I'd loved as a kid, with a tiny photo of me and Mom on the Jersey shore, our hair tangled from the wind, our smiles wide and unburdened. On the back, in her careful script, we didn't know how much we'd miss you until you were gone. No signature. Nathan and Claire didn't reach out. A cousin texted, saying they'd moved out, that Mom wasn't speaking to them, that the house felt like a ghost town, the Christmas tree still up in January, its needles littering the floor. I didn't ask for details. I didn't offer to visit. Instead, I built something new. I started a free workshop at the community center in Philly, teaching seniors how to secure their accounts, how to spot scams, how to trust their instincts when something felt off. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like ground I could stand on, something solid in a world that kept shifting under my feet. One evening, an older woman with kind eyes and a knit scarf patted my hand and said, "Your parents must be proud." I smiled, said nothing, the locket heavy in my pocket, its chain tangled from disuse. They were, once. March came without a tree, without calls, without the ornament swap I used to organize, the one where we'd each pick a new decoration and write our names on the back. There's a grief nobody warns you about, not the kind from death, but from the moment you realize the people you love chose a version of you that isn't real. And once they make that choice, they can't take it back, no matter how many lockets or letters they send. I keep the folder in a drawer, under old bills and a lease agreement, its edges curling slightly, the ink fading at the corners. I haven't opened it since that night. I don't need to. The truth hasn't changed, and neither have they.